Hey everyone, it's Nicolette here, and I'd like to welcome you guys to our Q&A section on access to legal advice. So in this Q&A session, we're going to be talking to two legal professionals about some of the trouble that as entrepreneurs we get ourselves into. So I'm sure that quite a few of you will actually be able to use this. So this activity is part of Spark Ideas Group's 30 days of celebrating entrepreneurship, which we are doing the entire month of November. And of course, the partners that are with us and sponsoring and supporting us are obviously the Stanbic Bank through the accelerator called Accelerate, it's an incubator, and obviously other organizations like Botswana Innovation Hub. I'm actually streaming from the Innovation Hub, so awesome to have them on board. The Local Enterprise Authority, which is another huge incubator of entrepreneurship in Botswana. The Standard Chartered Banks Foundation, Future Makers coming through to support the job of getting entrepreneurs onto their feet, the Creative Business Cup, Young Africa as well, and all of them are participating with us to make this a success and just trying to get you guys, get some advice, get things moving in terms of being an entrepreneur. Because you know what, it's honestly just tough out there. Today we have got two awesome people. These are actually two of my favorite people. I'm just going to share a few stories before I actually jump into allowing them to introduce themselves. So Rati, I've known for years, absolutely wonderful person, not just a lawyer, also an entrepreneur, doing so many amazing things. I talk to her at least once a week and we're always just venting. We get on the call and we're like, oh my gosh, we're entrepreneurs and this has happened and that has happened. So definitely a venting partner. And again, such a wise and very cautious person. And then we also have Christian. Funny story, when I first met Christian, the very first conversation I had with him, I developed such an intense friend crush on him. I was like, oh my God, I want this person to be my friend forever because he was just so awesome. So these are two absolutely lovely people. I'm going to put them on stage and I'm going to just ask them to tell us a little bit about who they are and what they do. So welcome, Christian and Rati. I'll start with ladies first. Rati, tell us who you are and what you do.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rati Murwisi, but you can call me Rati, because I know Rati can be a mouthful for some people who are not Shona speaking, so everyone calls me Rati. I'm a corporate lawyer by profession, but I am an entrepreneur at heart. So I have a consulting firm that I run that does business and legal and advisory consulting, and I also run a passion project. I call it my passion project because it's something I'm very passionate about. It's food, and I can't say I'm passionate about alcohol because that never sounds right, but it's ice cream, and it's alcohol infused ice cream. It's something that I discovered by mistake, but I found that there's a market for it, and I've decided to sell it. So that's me. I also love basketball and networking with people, be it professionally or socially. I just love meeting people and helping people. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you very much. And Christian, please do step in and introduce yourself as well.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Nicolette, for that amazing introduction. I also had a friend crush from the beginning, so don't worry about that. It's the truth. I work for a creative legal agency called Legalese. We provide legal solutions for startups, creatives, tech-based businesses from small to large. We are about a team of 10 legal experts, going from compliance to commercial, myself being commercial. We also do a lot of labor work as well. We basically get there and get into your business, giving you the support you need from the beginning and growing with you.
I love it. And because, as entrepreneurs, we do need that legal support because, there's a lot that happens, and that's why I put this here because I'm like, show us the red cards, show us the stuff that, we should actually cause us to stop, think before our businesses are eliminated. I often say that, my friends who are lawyers do not like getting phone calls from me because typically it's a phone call where I'm like, so there's this contract. I've already signed it, but now after the fact, can you take a look at it? But he's one of those people who's always like, no, Nicola, just don't sign it. Show it to me first. But I'm like, I'm ready to sign. Or just, I trust everyone. My first instinct is never to think that someone is trying to take advantage of me or that, I'll end up in trouble. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that just as an entrepreneur in general, I just want things to move quickly. So if someone's like, oh, sign this contract, I'll just be like, okay, I want the work, I want the money, I'm just gonna sign it, you know. So I think it's very important having people like you who'll be like, yeah, it's nice to be a nice person, but you know, don't just be signing everything all over the place. And I want to talk about the fact that, you know, the devil is in the details, you know, and how a lot of the times I think, you know, when we are as entrepreneurs, you know, just having lots of things being thrown at us, work wise, family wise, personal relationship wise, you know, sometimes when you get this huge contract, this you know, these pages and pages of text, you know, you really don't want to take the time to actually, you know, perhaps read through every single line, because you also maybe you're just exhausted. So I want to ask you, as somebody, Christian, who works with entrepreneurs in terms of, you know, making sure that they make the right decisions from a legal perspective, why do you feel that entrepreneurs do not always read the fine print? What is it that just makes us just dive into every single adventure? Is it just pure naivete, or is it just, you know, that we're exhausted and overwhelmed? Is it that sometimes we meet up with nefarious actors who just want to pressure us into signing things?
I mean, I have to say, so this slide is amazing for me because when I started in law, this was something I had to learn. It was like bashed in my head, literally, devil is in the details, because you have to slow down. You have to slow it down. Even if you want to sprint to some goal that you have in mind, slow down and read the details. If you don't understand the details, find out what they mean. And often that means, you know, seeking professional advice or even just going to the internet and questioning things. Not getting exhausted by the pages, right? There's lots of pages, like you said, but those details are important. So I think maybe one of the reasons it happens that people, you know, starting off businesses get into trouble is because they don't slow down and they don't care about the details. And I think it's important to remind yourself, even if you have to bash it in your head, that the details are important. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was saying that it is important that we need to remind ourselves that the details are important. And I think maybe it also has to do with the fact that as entrepreneurs, a lot of the times we're desperate. We are under pressure. We are just, you know, just like it's almost like we're drowning or suffocating. And it's you know, I think also because one of the things that happens as well is that in our daily life, let's say being online, you know, every time you get that terms and whatever thing from software, whether it's Facebook, whether it's a new program, it's always like, oh, did you read the terms and conditions? Are you just agreeing? And everyone's like, ain't nobody got time to read that. I agree. And then it's just like, it's there, it's signed. So I'm just gonna move on to Rati, who has had quite a few experiences of talking me through having signed things without reading them, you know, as an entrepreneur yourself. What is it? What do you think it is that gets us to engage in this very risky behavior?
I think it's just human nature. Sometimes we're not very patient with things, or like you're saying, you're now desperate and you just want it to be done. So you think, it can't be that serious. Really, they couldn't get me to sign like off my child or my first kidney or something like that. You never think that. But what you always need to remember is business is business. There's no friend in business. Everyone is there to make money. So they will get as much as they can get out of you. If you allow them to take 90%, they'll take 90%. So you have to make sure that anything you're considering signing or even getting into, please read the fine print. Like, I think for me, our first lesson with it was like in Contract Law 101. She literally was like, if you, any of you from this day sign a contract and I hear you sign, you've not even read the terms and conditions, like I'm failing you. So it became one of those things that ever since that class, I learned, even if it's a bank contract, even if it's Netflix, like someone, my mom laughed at me. I read the Netflix terms and conditions. And she's like, what? I was like, no. I'm not one of those people who, I don't know if they're going to give away my information. We're in a data protection age where your information can end up anywhere because of a contract you signed and you didn't read it and you didn't know that they share your information with other data protection or data mining sites. So you need to be very careful what you're signing, regardless of who it is. It could be your best friend. I always tell people think I'm very pessimistic, that I don't trust people, but I'm like, no. I'm a lawyer. I know what we are made to draft. So I don't want to sound evil and think your mom is going to crook you, but just read the fine print. Just know what everything that's in that agreement so that you are protected. Just know that it's protecting you. You're not trying to insult or kind of chastise the person on the other foot. It's for your protection. And when you look at it like that, you will be safe as long as you consider that it's for my protection and making sure that I'm safeguarding my assets, my business, or whatever it is that you're signing off. Then you'll be fine.
Wow, thank you for traumatizing all of us and telling us that there are no friends in the business, and business is business and money is money. And I remember a few years back, I used to really before, I completely would not even read contracts. Now I at least skim through them, and it's because I watched this movie where there was this couple, and the husband was running some businesses, and he'd always come to his wife and be like, "Oh, can you sign this document? Can you sign this document? I'm doing this, and that." And she would just be like, "Sure, honey." Sign, 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 sign. And then what happened is, he literally emptied the accounts. He basically vanished with all the money. But because she was the one who was signing all of the documents, not knowing, just saying, "Oh, this is my honey, my love, my sweetheart, my everything," she ended up being the one who went to jail because of that. And that ended up traumatizing me to no end. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I need to read every single contract." And very interestingly, the next day after I watched that movie, someone gave me a contract, someone that I trusted a lot, who, whenever they'd give me contracts to sign or something to sign, I'll just be like, "Yeah, sure, I'm just gonna sign it." And then I actually laughed and I was like, "Oh, I actually watched this movie and this happened, so I'm gonna read it today." And that was the day when I needed to read it because they had just tried to pull something insane. And I was like, "Wait, what's this?" And we actually ended up getting into a huge argument. So that is a very good point. So we've got a comment here. This is from Kyle. Rati's explanation regarding the reasoning behind reading the entire contract was spot on, because it's like, yeah, you never know what is actually being given away. And I guess the next thing I want to ask is, in terms of, so we've kind of touched on why entrepreneurs perhaps don't have the time to read contracts and stuff. The next thing I want to ask is, okay, let's talk about legal shenanigans. And when I'm talking about legal shenanigans, I don't just mean like, oh, when we don't read a contract. Sometimes even the people that, let's say, you partner up with, or maybe people that you're working with, sometimes things can happen and then you end up in legal jeopardy just because you are in association with that person. I'll give an example of how there was this music festival in Texas, in which Travis Scott was doing his thing, and then there was a stampede, people died, and now some of those people are suing him. They're saying, "Look, like we think that you were irresponsible to have this in this manner," and he's like, "I didn't even know that people were dying. I didn't know what was happening, whether he knew or not." He ended up getting into all sorts of things because I guess he's used to just being the artist that appears. It's like, "I'm going to get in front of the stage, I'm going to sing, I'm going to dance." And then there are people that are working for him. So what is it that we are also just not gluing our eyes into from a legal perspective, apart from just not the contracts that we're perhaps not reading? How else, do we get into these situations, I guess I can say? And I'll put that question to Christian first.
Cool. I think the Texas one is a really good example, right? Because it has to do with public safety. It has to do with the artists and not understanding the danger that could be there. The reality is these agreements that you have terms between each other, but sometimes there are other things that regulate the relationship outside of the agreement, depending on the industry you're in. Right? So if it's something that's like a public event, there may be specific things that are required of you in terms of the city you're in, the state, the country, that you're not aware of because it's not mentioned in the agreement. These things are really important. That's why when you get a professional who knows that jurisdiction that you're contracting in, they can give you advice beyond what the terms of the agreement are. So it's even beyond those details that we just spoke of before. There's more details, but it's important for you to, be wary of the possibility of those shenanigans, as you call them.
Thank you for pointing that out. And we're going to touch a little bit on in terms of having other experts coming on board, and why that is important, and why that is crucial. In terms of figuring it, when you're doing business in a different area or space in which you're not really comfortable with or perhaps knowledgeable about. But before I just quickly go on to that, someone put a comment here. It's Umpile, and Umpile is saying, I think she's commenting on why we signed these contracts without reading, and she says it shows just how trusting we are. We're extremely trusting, even when we shouldn't be. That's how we end up in dubious situations. I love the word dubious, the use of that word there, because I think that basically sums it up. Rati, I'm going to now come to you in terms of legal shenanigans, because I know that you get a lot of people out of legal shenanigans, or at least people come to you now when they're in the shenanigans. So why are we getting into this? Why is this just something that it's like, oops, well, I found myself in a mess. Who knew? I'm shocked. Yeah.
It's one of those tricky things, hey? I think like it comes with, there's a part of the law that's called tort or delict in other places of the world. So it's usually things like that. Sometimes, unfortunately, like with this case of the Travis Scott thing, I think it might also be Travis is the bigger bank. Sometimes lawyers go after the person with the biggest pocket. So sometimes, depending on your agreement, like we've said, it comes down to what you agreed in your terms and conditions. And this is a thing like, it's called vicarious liability. So when something like this happens, everyone is like counted as to have had some contributory negligence or contributed to whatever has happened. So they'll divide it amongst all the people involved, that this person had a 50% contribution to it and all that kind of stuff. So it now usually comes down to, when you guys agreed your contracts or your terms and conditions initially, what did you guys agree in terms of liability? Because there's some contracts that have a standard, we are jointly and severally liable type situations, or there's some where, because you are wanting the contract so bad, you will take all of the liability for whatever happens. God forbid, don't ever sign an agreement like that, please. But some people do sign those kind of agreement because they're so desperate to get the agreement done, not realizing that anything can happen in business, unfortunately. Like, who thought who would be in COVID for 24 months almost? So things like that can get you in a very serious bind. So it comes down to what you guys have agreed on in your agreement in terms of liability and how you guys are going to manage. Because I think most lawyers always suggest that you guys share the liability equally as much as possible, because that's the only way you can kind of go at it, or else you will be shouldering the burden. And as an entrepreneur, that can knock you out of business completely. It can bankrupt you. So a lot of bigger companies tend to kind of do that to you, because they make you think that if you don't sign that liability, it means you're not serious about being in business. They just try to scare you. Stand your ground and say, we must share it equally. Just because I'm a small business or an entrepreneur doesn't mean I don't deserve the same type of respect that you do in business. So just always make sure that that is your end all be all. You share liability equally, so that when things like this happen and you, God forbid, you end up in court or a legal situation, no one's going to sit there and say, oh no, you guys, this one contributed 90%, so they do it. As long as your agreement is sitting here saying you guys share liability equally, you won't have these legal shenanigans. So, yeah.
You brought up a very interesting point in terms of sharing liability. For those of you who are not familiar with the word, basically sharing like the risk. If anything happens, who's going to pay for it? So sharing that risk. Because I think, I think part of this has to do with the fact that being an entrepreneur, we consider it, most entrepreneurs, to just be, it's all risk. It's just all risky business. It's kind of like who a lot of us get to that stage where it's like, if I die, I die. I die, I die. That's what it is. Like, let me just do it. Let me just jump in. Let me take this opportunity. And you're right, a lot of the times, I know that I've had situations when people have literally tried to pressure me into a contract, because it's like, no, you're not serious. If you were serious about this, then you would actually, be ready to sign on the dotted line, sign right now. And that's often, one of the things, I feel like that's often like a red flag that a lot of people need to look out for. So I guess the next thing I want to touch on, since we've been talking about contracting and all of that, this is the fun part. So for people, let's say, who have not studied any form of business law, let's say you haven't gone to business school, so you haven't even had that one module on business law, which just tells you about that. And then it's like, okay, someone is like, great, I want to work with you, you want to work with me, send me a contract. And then as entrepreneurs, what do? We Google. It's like, just, yeah, So my question is, and I already know what Rati thinks about this, but Christian, I'll start with you. Should we be attempting to write our own contracts?
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be on the same side here. No, you shouldn't be. But the reality is, maybe what you do is you negotiate the terms of your contract that gets presented to you, but you shouldn't be getting contracts offline, then trying to use them as your own. So yes, feel the need and desire to adapt it to what you want to do, but don't go online and think it's yours. If you're contracting with someone and they present you with the contract, then yes, attempt to rewrite it to terms that work with you. If you are trying to find contracts online and use them as your own, they're not your own. Go find someone to help you. We can do it better, and we can do it with you. We can tailor it to what you need, right? And that's what you want. You don't want necessarily someone else's solution to their problem trying to be the solution to yours.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Rati, I can see you're rearing to go. You're ready. I can see you just like you're ready. Have at it. Have at it.
Nah, no, you see, you and I have discussed this like multiple times, and I also discuss this with a lot of my entrepreneur friends, or even just my friends in general who are in business, in any type of business. Google can be your worst enemy when it comes to contracts, because the unfortunate part that a lot of people don't realize, Google is an American company. Like, guys, it's American. So most of the contracts that you see on Google are American. And now the problem is America has a different law for every state. That's 52 states, guys. Like, that's a whole different lesson on its own to learn how to do that agreement. So it can do one of two things. It can send you down the right path, but with a different law, which will get you into trouble. Or it's going to scare you because it's going to give you a 20-page document when you really just need a 3-page document. Because as an entrepreneur or a small business and startup, you try to keep your agreements as simple as possible, because unless you're in fintech or cryptocurrency, then unfortunately it means you're going to have complicated agreements. But if you're in most of, I guess, FMCG or the basic kind of entrepreneurship, you don't need complicated agreements, because the simpler it is, the less likely you are to have arguments. So as lawyers, we're always taught, please keep it simple. You know the basics of a contract, what it needs: offer, acceptance, consideration, and that's about it. When you start now trying to be funny and smart and don't try to look smart with a legal contract. It will humble you and you'll end up on the wrong side of the law. So please, what I always suggest is, like, I remember it was a joke with me and all my friends, as you're coming up, try network and build relationships with people in the legal industry, because you'll find every lawyer needs to do pro bono. It's like a standard procedure for all of us. So the more you build friendships and relationships with lawyers, some of them are more likely to come up and say, I'll help you with your agreements for free. And then when you start making bank, then you can either put me on a retainer or agree on some sort of agreement. Because please understand, as lawyers, we prefer to do agreements before things go wrong. Because when things go wrong, I'm going to charge you. And it's going to be worth it, please understand. But it's my time and money. So I'm going to have to charge you, unfortunately. So I'd rather us not get to the charging stage, and I help you so that you're safe once and for all.
Wow, listen to you being so aggressive about it. And there's a comment here. I see I'm not the only person who does this. Paul has actually commented. She's like, guilty as charged. So I know I'm not the only person that's up to no good when it comes to this particular thing of contracting. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a bit of mercy. I'm just going to say, if we are, let's just say if, it's a hypothetical, if we have to, what are some basics that we should consider if we do have to prepare our own contracts? Because maybe it isn't going to, I think sometimes a contract can be as simple as this person, this ID number, I'm agreeing to pay XYZ for this amount of period and to this XYZ. So what are some of the basics that we should be keeping in mind for those people, let's say, who do not have a lawyer friend, who do not have access to legal services? If they're like, okay, I need to write something down, even if it's on a napkin, I don't care, but I need something and I need to do this now. What are some basics that we should keep in mind? And I'm going to go to you, Christian, first.
Cool. I think there are those bare bone basics, right? That like payment and delivery, that kind of contractual stuff that's standard, right? But I think one thing to always remember is, what do I get out of this? How do I know that I'm getting it? So is there accountability? And if I'm not getting it, how do I enforce it, right? And if you have that flow, right? What is my benefit here? Because sometimes that benefit is literally hidden in a haystack, and you need to pick it out. So make sure it's clear, and then make sure it's accountable. Can you actually ensure that what is expected is done, and how do you enforce it when it's not? I think are big basics. But again, don't do your own contracts.
Guilty as charged. Rati, on to you. Bare bones.
Well, I agree with Christian. Those are the very important basics that you need. But I think also what you need to do is be very specific as well, as specific as you can, because also what you might find is it might be unclear of who the parties are or what it is exactly you're contracting to do. So you need to be sure that both parties know what is expected of them, and if you have timelines, if your project is time specific or that kind of thing, you need to be specific about the timelines you're working with. And if you fail to meet timelines, do you want to penalize people for it? Because there's some things that if you miss a deadline, like especially like in places like agriculture, if you miss certain deadlines, that's done. Like it can't be redone again until like maybe next year or something. So you need to be very careful in being specific with your timelines with certain things. And the unfortunate thing is, which is why we tell you go to a lawyer, there's certain agreements that have to be done a certain way. So you know that the financial industry says it has to be done like this. If it's not done like this, we can't enforce it in court. And certain things, like it differs from industry to industry. So you have to be careful that if you're drafting your own contract, make sure you know your industry. At least you be familiar with your own industry, because as a lawyer, we have generic advice. Until I know that you're in the medical industry or you're doing biochemistry or something like that, then I can tell you, oh, okay, I need to maybe register your contract with this certain board, because if it's not registered, it never happened and you can't get any consideration, you can't even get paid. So it's things like that. You need to be sure you know who your regulators are for your industry and who you're dealing with, and be specific. I think those are the three ones. Be specific about who's involved and what's being done. And then at least we can try help you. Otherwise, it's a bit tricky.
The next question that I want to ask is, should there be a contract for everything? Because we all heard about this. Lawyers love to litigate. You guys love your pieces of paper. There must be a paper for everything. It's just, it needs to be written down. And is it that, sometimes as entrepreneurs, we kind of think, it's a small thing. Should there be some form of contract for everything? And are you seeing instances where, because there isn't that piece of paper about that thing, that it's like it's almost like just I guess it's just everything is up in the air. There's no certainty. So I know that as legal professionals, you like to have everything locked down into place. But what is your view on this, on having a contract for every single thing, Christian?
I mean, I understand the reasoning, right? You don't want to have so much paperwork. But the problem is that if you agree to things, you're still agreeing verbally, right? You still have these terms between each other, but you have no record of it. So when things do go wrong, if they go wrong, and I mean, I can tell you from experience, even the best of intentions can end in a bad story, right? So you want to be able to, without emotion, refer back to the words. And that's why you put it in writing, right? So that you don't have to feel anything, but this is what the words are. When things go south, you can go back to that. And that, goes back to when you're perhaps working with friends, working with family, and things can get heated, and you really started out with, pie in the sky kind of idea, and something went wrong that was unforeseeable, and now you need to fight about it. And if you don't have it written down, what are you going to use to prove that this is what you agreed on?
Thank you. That's a very good point. What will you have as proof? And as you said, good intentions, lots of good intentions all around. I think, especially when it comes to, let's say, even just the formation of business, working with people you're familiar with, people that you like. So often it's just like, no, but we know each other, we trust each other, So, but then I think it's also this reluctance to every single, like, it's almost, okay, so I think that there's this perception that as soon as you offer to have something written down, it means you don't trust that person. So sometimes it's like, wait, don't you trust me? We don't need that. We're friends. We're family. And we love each other, or whatever it is. Like you said without emotion, which never ever happens. Everything's emotional when you've got friends and family. Rati, coming to you. I know you like to fight. You like to fight. So I know you're gonna be like, I want to be prepared for every single fight. So I'll make sure that I always have the ammunition. But please do respond to this question.
Caveat that I don't like to fight. That's why I have agreements. Anyways, I'm joking. Do you know what? The reason why I always say you always have to have an agreement, like he's saying, emotions get in the way. The moment there's a disagreement, it means there's emotions. If there's a piece of paper that says A is plus B, if C happens, D is going to happen, then we're not even going to argue about it. It's kicking in automatically, and you just have to go to this paper and say, the piece of paper says we're supposed to do A, B, C, D. We don't like it, but we both agreed to it. So that's what's going to happen. The problem with me is, like you said, it's usually people then start to think, oh, you don't trust me. People think I'm crazy, but I've always said, if you have a potential business partner, someone wants to work with you and they don't want to sign an agreement, that's a red flag. Run as fast as you can, because anyone who doesn't want to be held accountable is not a person you want to work with, because that person will do something shady along the way, and that's not a safe business partner to have. Sometimes I just always tell people that having an agreement, like we said at the beginning, is to protect you. We're not trying to fight here. We're not trying to shout at each other or build walls like a Chinese wall or something. It's to protect both of us, not just me, not just you, but both of us, and the business at hand. Because sometimes the person's refusing to sign an agreement because they know they can benefit more if they don't sign an agreement. And 9 times out of 10, it's to your detriment if you don't sign an agreement. So really and truly, I always tell people, sign an agreement. It can be the most basic of things, which is also what I always tell people. People think the moment you say contract, it's a 20-pager or 100-pager. No, it can really be 2 pages of just saying A plus B wants to do C. And if C doesn't happen, it's either D or E that's going to happen. And we carry on from there. That's it. You don't need to complicate things. You don't need to overthink things. Just put it down and say, we're going to do this. And this is how we're going to go forward. If that's not there, it's a recipe for disaster. So yes, there should be a contract for everything.
All right, so coming to the next point where you had briefly mentioned about red flags, and I was actually going to talk about red flags next. What are some red flags? You already mentioned one. If someone doesn't want to sign a contract, you're coming to this person, you're like, okay, let's put it down on paper. They don't want to. They're like, I don't know about this. Is this necessary? Since you already started on that train, Rati, what other red flags would you say that entrepreneurs should be watching out for when it comes to negotiating contracts?
Oh, I'll go first then. Oh, since I'm already here. Sorry, Christian. No, I think people who try strong arm you, especially for entrepreneurs, like I know in bots, it's a big thing. Big companies tend to want to put you in line about how often they want to pay you, like they want to do the 30-day, 60-day payments. Please be honest with whoever you're working with. If your business cannot handle a 30-day cycle of payment or a 60-day payment cycle, say it and be very honest, because you are going to put yourself into debt or put yourself into financial troubles that are not necessary. Be honest with what you can handle as a business and what you can not handle, so that when you're negotiating, don't put yourself at a detriment, thinking, okay, it'll come in when the money comes in, I can then fix that and then fix that. Don't, because if you put yourself at a negative before you even start, you're going to lose that negotiation. Almost always, you're going to lose it. So always make sure that you're at a level playing field with whoever you're negotiating with, which is why it's best to get legal advice before you go into a negotiating room. However, there are a lot of YouTube videos now that are there about negotiating, because negotiating is not purely just from a legal point of view. It's literally, you do it in various places of business. So even as an entrepreneur, if you're going to pitch, if you're going to go try get angel investors, you're going to need to be skilled at negotiating regardless. So you need to make sure that it's a skill that you learn by yourself, garner it in any way possible. It's not just a legal skill, it's a business skill that you're going to need to learn. So there are different books, videos, and whatever that you can watch that you should go learn, because if you don't know how to negotiate, no contract can help you. Like, you'll sign the wrong contract that leaves you only making 10% out of your deal and you're left with nothing. So yes, learn how to negotiate. But not just from a legal point of view, but from like a business point of view as well, because I think that'll help you in every form of your business.
Oh, thank you for that. Christian, red flags. Tell us, what should we be on the lookout for? Strong arming, we've spoken about. People not wanting to sign contracts. What else should we be looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you reframe negotiating as like a conversation, right? You're both talking about the intentions of how this is going to go. Then that kind of gives you a ease into this minefield sometimes of discussing the terms. And when those terms are like very heavy in one direction, where it's not reciprocal, where rights are very much on one side, and the reality is often that's the case, right? The money holds a lot of power in that argument. It doesn't mean you can't have the conversation about what is right for you. And I think the accounting aspect is a really big one. People just dive in saying like, cool, I can definitely run my business this way. But the reality is not every business can. And if you have the conversation and you negotiate those terms to what your business can do, then you're more likely to succeed in the end, right?
Thank you very much for pointing that out. So I guess now, we have also like touched a bit on, when people are feeling a bit reluctant to sign contracts, for instance. I think one of the things that we struggle with as entrepreneurs is that when someone is reluctant to actually sign on the dotted line, how do we communicate in a way that expresses the right context, shall I say? Because if I think if someone sometimes you deal with people. I'm going to give an example of there was a time when I was pressured into signing a contract, and when I was like I've got some questions about this, I'm a bit uncomfortable about this, then it was like a huge, like there was like a mini explosion. It was kind of like, oh, so you're not serious about this? Oh, you don't want this, that's why you don't want to sign this? Well, if you want to go, you can go, just go. And then it was like, that is not what I said. I had some questions, and it became very tense. And Nicolette being Nicolette, for those of you that know me, I'm quick to I always have a canister of gasoline, paraffin, whatever. Like, I'm ready to just douse everything on fire and light a match. So I just came out like charging, and it was like, well, don't talk to me like that. I don't care about you. I don't care about your business. You want to act like that, be very careful with me. But sometimes you're not as crazy as Nicolette. You're not just going to be like, well, you and your business and everything can go to hell. So how do we communicate in a way in which we can push back when other people are kind of either being reluctant, being sketchy, without us also feeling like maybe this is going to be the end of this business arrangement. Because like Rati had mentioned, that when it comes to this, it's actually, negotiating is a skill that's a skill on multiple fronts, not just on a legal front, even from a psychological perspective. But you as legal professionals, when I know that you guys already obviously versed in verbiage and twisting people with your words, but how would you advise an entrepreneur to couch their language in the event that they have someone who's reluctant to sign a contract, they have someone who they feel perhaps is trying to manipulate them? What sort of things should they say? What sort of language should they use that maybe they don't feel like either they've overreacted or underreacted? And I'll go to you, Rati, first.
Yeah, no, that's a very tricky situation. Like with us, we also deal with those situations, please understand. Us more so, and we usually deal with those when it's like very big amounts. And it usually comes down to accountability. It means one or both of you just is not comfortable with being held accountable for a certain part of that agreement, or maybe all of it. I would say it's usually about confidence, being confident enough in whatever it is you're bringing to the table and what you want to do. The fact that you've gotten to the stage that you have an agreement that's ready to be signed and everything is there, it's an achievement on its own. That's not an easy thing to get to as a business person in general. So if you find that you've gotten to that stage and the other person still won't sign the agreement, I think give them a time frame of how long you're willing to wait. And then if they still can't come to the party, then just let it go. Because honestly, the moment you try and negotiate after this, usually someone's losing. And that person is trying to manipulate you to let go of something that you need to actually hold on to. So you know that in your agreement, there's certain things that you can't let go. These ones are negotiable. That happens with both parties coming to the table. But once you've got to the stage where you've given everything you can give, and that other person is, you don't know what they want, but they just won't give, sometimes I think just let it go. As much as it's a viable business proposal or it's a project, you're better off letting it go, because 9 times out of 10, if you go into that agreement, it's probably just going to go left. If not very quickly, somewhere down the line where it's very expensive for you. So you'd rather cut your losses now than when you're now tied up to that person and it's an even bigger cost. And as an entrepreneur, your money is important. You don't want to be just leaking money for no apparent reason. So the moment the person doesn't want to sign the dotted line, just let it go. Because also it shows them that you're serious and you're not desperate, because desperation always gets us into trouble. So you'd rather not be desperate. If they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. Move on.
Thank you for that. Christian, what are your thoughts on this? On using verbal words, verbal massage, when you're afraid of offending or burning a bridge?
First, we're twisting with our words, and now we're massaging. I love it. I think for me, because often I've been in positions where someone is trying to, finalize this contract and get everyone to sign, and it's been negotiating, and we finally got it all down, and someone's still not there. And the key for me is like, what is making you uncomfortable here? Like, have that conversation, ask that question. Why are we waiting? Like, what's the one thing holding you back? And people they're not always honest in that space. Sometimes they want to hold their cards close to them. I think in that instance, maybe finding a legal professional to have that conversation outside of you, someone else to have that conversation and answer those questions, give those answers that they can trust, is an investment worth having, right? Because then you not only do you then get it across the line by getting the signature, but then you also can start with the foundation of trust between each other, because you've taken the time to invest and give answers, solid answers from a professional, and everybody's calm and happy, and good intentions, hopefully good endings, right?
Oh, that is the hope. Good intentions, good endings. I'm no longer that optimistic. I'm just pessimistic as in general as a person. But talking about optimism, pessimism, especially when it comes to being an entrepreneur, the next thing I want to touch on is protecting your intellectual property, because a lot of the times, so many businesses or so many concepts of businesses are started just on the fly. I always sometimes I do this talk about creativity and entrepreneurship, and one of the things I always say is that the talk is sponsored by a gentleman called Fried Lebrun, who actually isolated or discovered the caffeine molecule. And I always mention that industrialization proper started was coincided with the popularity of coffee houses, because a lot of people perhaps who couldn't in England at that time drink water because it wasn't clean. It was either beer or other things, and then people started drinking coffee. And then because people were congregating together to drink coffee, and obviously the caffeine starts working its magic, you start coming up with ideas, and things start happening. But a lot of the times, you meet someone at a random thing, a random function, or maybe you're standing at a bus stop. These things happen so often, just in so many different ways. And then it's like, hey, that's a great idea, but also if we could do this, this would be great, and also if we can do this, this would be great. But now, one of the questions that I often encounter with entrepreneurs is they're like, Nicolette, I have an idea, but I'm afraid someone's going to steal my idea. And it's like, how do I protect my idea? So I know that typically when we talk about intellectual property, we're like, oh, register a trademark, or if you have some sort of prototype, then you can register those designs or something. But I really want to touch on this thing where somebody's like, okay, so I sat with this person and we came up with this concept, but I also want to benefit from it. But I feel like maybe, they can decide to run with it without me, or something as simple as you go to a company, you make a presentation, and it's like, hey, I've got this concept, I'd like to come through and work with you on it. And then the next thing, it's like they're like, no, we're not really interested. The next thing, they've got like a copycat of the exact same thing that you were trying to produce. So what ways can we protect just even our ideas, because ideas are not, look, they're not easy to come by, and a lot of entrepreneurs are so paranoid about this. That's why a lot of the times, when somebody's like, oh, tell me what you're doing, they're like, oh no, I don't really want to talk about it. It's because they need the funding, they need the attention, but it's like, okay, if I tell someone my idea, it's going to get stolen. So what remedy can you advise for this? I mean, one of the things that I do, again, I know nothing. I forgot everything I learned in business law in university, everything, most of it. But the only thing that I do is I always try to make sure that there's some sort of paper trail, whether it's an email trail where I'm like, okay, we had this conversation. Here are the summary of what we spoke about, and this is what we touched on, and just let me know if I forgot anything. That's like the one thing that I do. So if there's ever a dispute, I'll be like, nope, I sent this email, you confirm that you got the email, and these are the details. And I also have a note taker that joins every single meeting that I'm in. But what other ways can we protect our intellectual property? If I can just start with you, Christian.
Cool. I mean, I've definitely been in this situation answering this question to many people starting out, right? And I think the first thing, and I know we're talking about putting everything in paper, but the reality is what happens with that is you get to see what is the intention, right? So I disclose this information for this purpose. And if it's very clear what the purpose of that disclosure is in writing, then when it's taken outside of the realm of what was agreed to be the purpose, then you can very clearly say, no, you can't do that. If that's not happening, if you're not putting it in writing, how can you say that your idea has been copied or was your idea then in the beginning? Specific jurisdictions have things where copyright happens at the creation of something, but the idea is still in the mind. There is no manifestation of it yet, right? So because there's no manifestation, it may not be protected as you may think it is, right? And so then what you have to do is write why I'm here disclosing this information with you, and to what extent you're allowed to use that information.
Wow, awesome. So everything needs to be written down somewhere. Don't just have pie in the sky and then you can't prove what your pie in the sky was. Thank you very much for that. And again, you mentioned something also very important that in certain jurisdictions, it is as soon as you create it, people say, well, it's you own it. But that's not, we shouldn't always assume that that happens everywhere. So thank you very much for pointing that out. Rati, coming to you on this topic.
This is a very tricky one, and I think it's the one thing that lawyers absolutely hate because intellectual property is so complex. Now, you start off with the typical adage that you hear as an entrepreneur. There's no new idea under the sun. Like we're slowly getting to that stage now. There's nothing new. Now, like he's saying, it's about how you disclose your conversation. Like, how did you start the conversation? What are you discussing? What's the purpose of the discussion? You need to be careful as an entrepreneur. You don't just speak about your ideas to anyone and everyone. Like, and I remember the conversation you had last week with the guys' access to finance last week, and one of the guys said his biggest mistake was discussing a project that they wanted to work with, and then they found out that someone in their organization went and ran with that exact same project with one of their biggest competitors. That's a typical example of you could sue someone for intellectual property because that was an idea that was developed in-house, and there's a paper trail of how the project was going and the like. That's a proper case for intellectual property theft. You now need to be very wary of who you have in your space when research and development is happening. Essentially, that's what it is. R&D is a very tricky and very safeguarded thing. So when you are developing an idea or you're trying to like spitball or kind of bounce ideas of people, you need to be very sure of the people you do this with. I'm one of those people because I'm a lawyer, I really always have that conversation first and be like, listen, we're discussing this. I just need to bounce an idea off you. This is my idea and I just need to hear what it sounds like outside. Please don't go and mention this to outside people, whatever. I now have that conversation with anyone and everyone who I'm discussing with because it safeguards you as well. Because if anyone else goes now and says, oh my gosh, we're discussing this, and you're like, but why are you discussing that in public? We agreed that it's a you and me type thing, or it's us at this table. So with things like that, you are protected. So you need to be very careful to keep it like to a very small number of people who you bounce off your ideas, because also then you can track if someone has indeed stolen your idea. Because sometimes you find that you think you came up with the idea, but it's something you heard when you're in a coffee shop or you're in a supermarket and someone was talking about it and they walked past you and your brain caught it, but didn't really kind of digest it at that point. And then at a later stage, it comes back up. So idea theft is a tricky situation. You can only kind of say it's yours when you've actually manifested, like he said. And when we were doing IP law at university, they told us IP law, the devil's in the detail. You have to be very specific when you're now trying to trademark, copyright, or patent something, to the point where, like example, like the most famous case in IP law is there's the Pepsi and Coke idea where for them to patent it and trademark it, they literally had to have the recipe written in the little box for them to actually safeguard it. So it's things like that. The McDonald's jingle is patented, and they literally wrote the notes down of that specific song and how it sounds on a computer and on a piano. So that's how specific you have to be if you want to register it or in any form of way. So keep that in mind if you want to protect something, and it's something that's serious. Protect it as quickly as you can. Protect it, because that's their job. They steal ideas from other people, and that's how they kind of make their money.
I love that you said that there are people who it's their jobs to steal ideas.
Oh no, yeah, there are people like that. It's just rather frustrating.
So I guess my next question is, what do you as lawyers, like every time someone comes to you and they're like, look, I need help with this, or they're like, look, I'm in a situation, or this has happened. What do you wish you could just broadcast to every single entrepreneur out there and be like, please, these things, please just keep this in your head, like just drill it into your mind. What are those things? I'll start with you, Christian, because we've lost Betsy for a moment.
Sure. I think something that we say at Legalese quite often to our clients, especially in the beginning, right, is you don't know what you don't know. At the end of the day, like you may think you know exactly what your business and industry requires of you, right? Or how you're going to succeed. But the reality is, until you sit down with someone who is a professional and can assist you in what is happening in your jurisdiction and in your industry, then you're not sure what you don't know, right? You need to sit down and actually be potentially educated on that. And from those conversations where you sit down and you kind of create a roadmap for your business, you then can plan the best way forward. And maybe you don't do everything in the beginning because you don't have the funds to do so, but then at least you have a map on what you need to do to get there and protect your rights. And I think that happens only when you have that conversation about what you don't know.
I absolutely love that. You don't know what you don't know. And I think acknowledging that is also something that's very difficult for many people. I think also as entrepreneurs, people expect that when they talk to you about your business, your industry, that you need to have an answer like this. And that leads to a lot of hubris. Rati, what do you wish everyone knew, apart from the fact that not everybody's your friend, everybody wants to make money, don't sign before you read it. I know all of your lies because I've been hearing these lies for some time. But tell us what else do you wish everyone knew?
Ooh, that's a interesting one since you've taken all my lines. Thanks. The devil's in the fine print. I think people don't realize that with most agreements, for you to know if someone's being honest or not, look at the way the agreement is drafted. And like 9 times out of 10, if you noticed, when you open a bank account, the very tricky and contentious clauses are the ones that are in the small fine print at like the end of the contract. I always tell people, if you're reading like a contract, a lot of them you'll find that that's where it is. I wish people would actually read what they're being given, because I don't think people understand how frustrating it is to have someone come to you and say, oh my gosh, I need help, I need to get out of this. And you'll be like, you had one job, to read. And unfortunately, because you didn't read and you just signed, legally you're bound by what you agreed to. And that's the crazy thing. Like, people don't understand where
Oh dear, we've lost her for a bit there. We're having internet issues. Sorry about that, but I'm sure she's gonna come back just now because she's actually just around the corner. So I know I'm gonna she's gonna pop up again. So just moving forward, I want to go to the next section, which is the most fun section that I enjoy in every single live stream. And wait, actually, before I go into that, I wanted to ask one other question because I think, we've been talking about legal battles. We've been talking about, you need to protect yourself. The question that I want to ask, Christian, is a lot of entrepreneurs, let's say they are being roughly handled by, let's say, for instance, a competitor, a partner, whatever it is. I'll give an example of the Meta and Facebook situation where Facebook is like, whoa, look, we're now Meta, and then this little company comes up and says, no, actually, we started the trademark registration for Meta, exactly what you guys have. So it's the exact image, the exact name. And Facebook's lawyers have been trying to get us to sign over our rights to this for months. They wouldn't even tell us who they were working for. They were just like contacting us and saying, hey, we want to buy this image, we want to buy this name from you. We see that you're in the process of trademarking it, and we want it. And they were like, no, this is our startup. We had plans. We're not just gonna sell everything to you. And then eventually they said, look, eventually Facebook just decided to go ahead and just register and just like announce and say, whoop, here we are, we're Meta. It's exact same logo, slightly different color. And and the small company is like, oh, wait, what's happening? But then Facebook is kind of like, yeah, so we are now Skynet, and we are taking over everything, and you don't have the money to defeat us. So good luck, and we'll see you in court. And typically people that have that much money can actually afford to do that. They can bury you in paperwork. They can just have their lawyers just draft up all of these this paperwork just generated to just use up your time and your resources. So is it actually possible, if you have an entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur is like, okay, so I'm kind of in a David and Goliath situation. There's this really big company, but they want to take everything, and I don't know if I can win because I don't have any money. So what would your advice be? And I'll start with you, Christian.
Yeah, I mean, that Facebook example is perfect, right? Because it is kind of a Goliath. And that's where you get afraid of, right? Because litigation is expensive worldwide. No matter where you are, litigation is costly. And even when you win, it's costly. It's going to cost you, And I think it's important to look for what are your rights? So what rights do I actually have? So people sometimes do fear-mongering tactics, right? They actually say things that necessarily would not be enforced, right? And you need to understand whether or not you should be afraid. So understanding if what has been presented to you is actually legally viable and enforceable is important. And then the other thing is, you don't always have to go to court, right? There's alternative options out there. There's arbitration, there's mediation. I mean, obviously that can cost you because you still have to get representation, but then you may be out of the legal system and perhaps the timelines are better for you. You're not so pressured, but start with figuring out what your rights are. In that situation, right, they already have the rights to Meta, right? So they're the ones being chased. It isn't that they have to fight for the right of their name. It's Facebook's coming after them. So it's better to be chased than to be chasing, right? And then, from there you can probably find an alternative. And then if you can't, deciding whether or not it's worth it is an exercise worth doing before spending all the money you have in your bank account.
Thank you very much for that. That was awesome. And yeah, you're right. I feel like in general, yeah, we do have to decide if it's worth it. I mean, I have to say, if I was Meta, I would be like, I don't know if I want to fight Facebook.
Well, also fighting on principle is never good.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just going to cost you so much.
I tend to be that person. I tend to get into a lot of fights based on principle. I'm like, I'm not going to let anybody just try to like roll me over. So, and there's so many times I'm just like, Nicolette, you should have let that go. So coming to you, Rati, and like, what is your feeling about this? I know that a lot of the clients that you work with in your business consultancy are smaller businesses, and so. Is it possible for them to actually fight back? Because I mean, you've worked for some of the bigger organizations on the continent, as well as working with smaller entrepreneurs. What are your thoughts on this?
I think like what Christian said is you need to know what your rights are. Once you know what your rights are, you know where the fight is. Is it going to be a battle? Is it a war? Is this going to take me years to fight? Because this Meta case, depending on how they agree, it could be a war or it could be a battle. It just depends on who's being reasonable, or is this one of those, I've got the bigger pocket, so I'm going to drain your bank so that you just give it to me. Because that's what you might find. There's some people who, just like I said, it's some people's jobs to steal IP. They will do it and say, because I know I have the money and the power, I'm going to go put you into litigation and you will spend so much money fighting it that I'll end up bankrupting you and I'll just buy you out because you're refusing to sell it to me. Because some other people use it as, it means they've tried to buy you out and you refuse. So they're like, oh, okay, since you're refusing the buyout, I'm just going to bankrupt you so I can buy you. So now it just depends on where you stand with your rights and how much, like you're saying, is it worth it? Because sometimes it might be worth it financially, but emotionally and work-wise, it drains you so much that the business loses its focus. And now the business is worth nothing by the time you're done fighting it, because you've been so busy trying to fight off this giant that you've lost like probably 60% of your client base. And now your client base just look at you like, geez, you forgot about us. You're so busy fighting that, and you're now no longer servicing me and giving me my services. So I'm going to jump ship and go to the other ones. So it's never a nice place to be put in when you now have a legal battle on your hands. But it's more to do with your rights than actually needing a lawyer. Because some of these things just fight themselves. Like you're saying, this Meta case, it could almost fight itself, really and truly, because they own the rights. and Facebook is just being, Mark Zuckerberg is being Mark Zuckerberg. Like he's basically saying, I can do it, I can buy you out. Let me just scare you enough for you to be like, okay, I'll sell it to you for this amount and let's just get it over and done with. Because apparently he's known for being that person in business. So that's how he functions. So you just need to know who you're dealing with. Also, it might be better for you to sell the company and start off another thing again. And gives you the big amount of seed capital you need to start off your other passion project that you've been working on. So it's all about weighing your options. You don't necessarily, it's not based on just having a lawyer, because some of these battles, you can have the best lawyer and it's still going to go down the toilet. But it's going to be very expensive going down the toilet. So you just need to be very careful. And also think about what you as a company want, not just you personally, because you might want to win as a person, but it doesn't serve your business if you win. So there's a lot of things to consider.
I love that. It might you might personally want to win, but it might not serve your business. This is all advice that, to be honest, I frankly don't want to hear it, because you know me, I'm here to fight. It's just like I'm always ready. You know, it's someone was like, Nicolette, I recently met someone and they're like, Nicolette, why is it I've been studying you on Facebook, and it's like, you just like to fight. And I was like, I like to bring a bazooka to a knife fight. I'm just saying, you know. So this is something, you know, that I personally needed to hear, because I do tend to just fight most battles on principle. So just moving on, what would be your last word of advice that you would just give to startups, you know, around this topic of just, you know, managing one's legal affairs? I'll start with you, Christian.
You know, I was actually talking to my best friend last night about side hustles and all the people starting off these new businesses and all of these startups that are coming during this time. And it takes so much courage, right? It takes a lot of courage to, you know, push through and do what you're trying to do. Courage is easier to find or easier to have when you know what you don't know, right? And the only way you get that is when you speak to professionals like us. And it's not that you didn't have courage before, but it's much easier to have it once you know. And I think when you start up a business, take that courage, go learn and educate yourself. Even just having a session where you just sit and ask questions is perfect. You don't have to get the contracts yet. You don't have to get the whole setup yet, but just understanding how to structure your business, you know, whether it needs to be, you know, a partnership, a sole proprietorship, a PTY, like these little basics you only get when you ask the questions to people who know the answers.
I love that. We should ask questions. We shouldn't be afraid to actually approach legal professionals and say, so I'm in this situation, or, you know, I need assistance with this. And even just asking people questions. I think, like we had mentioned, you know, sometimes just studying how people are responding to you, wanting to protect yourself, can also tell us a lot. And coming to you, Rati, last word of advice to entrepreneurs.
I agree with Christian. You should never be afraid to ask questions. And please understand, there's no dumb question ever that you can ask a lawyer. There's no dumb question, because you find as a lawyer, some of the questions that you get asked, actually, they teach us. So really and truly, I always tell anyone I work with or talk to, please don't be afraid to ask me questions, because you might find that I don't even know the answer and I'm going down a rabbit hole. Understand, lawyers, we're undercover nerds. And once we find something that we don't know how it works, we are going to go down a rabbit hole trying to find how that thing works, so that it doesn't come and hit you ever again in a courtroom or anything else. So don't be afraid to ask questions. That's a very good thing. But second, I think be that person who goes down a rabbit hole with every and any aspect of your business. Because if you go down rabbit holes for everything, you're likely to learn all the uncanny things and this, which also would require you to follow people who are in similar businesses. It doesn't have to be exactly what you want to do. Look at how someone else in a similar industry is functioning. If you're brave enough, you can strike up a conversation with them. I'm one of those people who I can talk to anybody. So I've learned that not everybody's like me. They don't have that madness where I can walk up to a stranger and start having a conversation like we're best friends. So that's a very lucky thing I have. But it's given me some of the best relationships business-wise and socially. So don't be afraid to ask, because I've learned the wealthiest people in this world, they are so endeared to you if you go and ask them a question about their business or how something in their industry works, so that they will sit you down and be like, so, young man, when I was your age, I know we all hate it, but trust me, those conversations sometimes give you the best tidbits that you can then innovate and bring to this kind of generation in this world. Because I know some of my best ideas for loopholes and contracts came from me arguing with my dad. And if anyone knows me and my dad, we've worked together for the better part of my adult life, and he's been in business for a very long time. But he's very old school business, and he's very against tech. He doesn't like tech. So for me, it made me learn how to figure out how to deal with those kind of clients, because his age group is the one who's in senior management right now, and those are a lot of the people who are high net worth individuals that you will be talking to as an entrepreneur, and you're trying to pitch your idea to. You need to sell that idea to that mindset. So now when you deal with that mindset on a daily basis or frequent enough when you're developing your product or service, whatever it is, you then know how to pitch it to that person without sounding condescending or like you're insulting that person's intelligence and being like, I know better than you, buy my product because I'm going to make you better. Some people don't always respond very well to that. So I think talking to people will really help you. Talk to any and everyone and you'll learn.
I love that. Talk to anyone and everyone, and you'll learn. And no question is too stupid to ask. No stupid questions. That was absolutely phenomenal, because I think a lot of people, we're very reluctant. It's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to ask that question. I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm doing. So thank you very much for pointing that out. So now we're moving on to my favorite part, where I ask you guys exciting questions, and then you have to be brutally honest, and you have to tell us your secrets. So as legal professionals, you're out here giving us your best advice, telling us what to do, telling us what not to do. My question to both of you is, do tell us of an instance where you fumbled when it came to a contract and you regretted it, and why you fumbled, and so how you got yourself into shenanigans, as you say. I'm gonna start with you, Christian. Christian looks like he's thinking very hard about it, as if like he's just like, no, I never got into legal shenanigans. It's never happened.
I was actually having like PTSD. That's actually what was happening right there. I was definitely like thinking of, fresh out of law school, thinking like, walking with confidence and being humbled, and that humbling comes with not reading those details and not paying attention. Because when you walk with such confidence and thinking like you know everything, you breeze over the important stuff, or the stuff that can be important when things do go wrong or go south, So I think for me, what I learned from those instances, the very few of them that ever happened, is that you have to slow it down, read the details. And when you don't know, ask the questions. And it's okay that you don't know, because at some point, the person who's giving you the answer didn't know either. And they know now because of experience, and you know now because you asked.
Thank you so much for being honest about that, because I feel like so many people graduate from law school and it's like, I know everything. I am the new Harvey Specter. All of you come and I'll share my wisdom with you. So it's nice to know that you guys also fumble. Rati, horror stories, fumbling. Tell us about your fumbling.
Oh, I'm trying to think, because as a lawyer, you tried like you say, we try to sound like we're superheroes, and we never fail. So we'll just conveniently block it out. Oh, actually no, like the current thing that I'm facing now with my Facebook account. You know that thing when they always tell you update your terms and conditions, and when you update your information? Yeah, I was that smart person who decided to just, you click that thing, you're like, update later. I've gotten locked out of my Facebook account, and it's using a number that I don't use at the moment, which means now I have to go through the long process of contacting Facebook, and they verify my ID before they can give me back my Facebook account. And funny enough, I'm not really on Facebook for purely social. It's for my business stuff, because I now have business pages and stuff. So now I'm literally shut out of those because they're all banked on my Facebook account. So there's the thing, guys. When it asks you to update your information, please do it. Don't just click later, because you can end up like me now, having to go through a whole long process where I actually now have to contact Facebook and do that whole long process because I don't have access to that number anymore. So yes, that's a nice moment where I fumbled the legal bag. Fun times.
I like the way that both of you gave such benign examples. It's kind of like, oh, I can't tell a horror story? No, nothing too bad. So I was like, oh, see, this is when you notice how slippery lawyers are. You ask them a tough question, and then they're like, so my Facebook account. So when I first got out of law school, and it's like, oh, that's some nice slipping and sliding. Wow,
you
done.
know the way legal is set up, and you have client protection and stuff. You can't really tell you the proper
Privacy.
because yeah, we're going to be divulging private information, and now we're getting sued. We don't want to be getting sued.
Yeah. I can see you guys trying to sneak out on that, but I will allow it since I like both of you a lot. But I want to thank both of you for being such phenomenal guests and for being so open and earnest and authentic with your advice that you're giving out. Absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I appreciate it because I know with lawyers, time is money. You get paid by the hour. So I was looking at the clock. I was like, oh, I need to hurry this up. Otherwise, just now they're gonna be like, excuse me, I could be getting some major money for this. Can you hurry it up? But thank you so much. You're both absolutely awesome.
Thank you so much for having us. It was really great.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so guys, this has been absolutely phenomenal. Getting to do this live stream Q&A session on access to legal advice. For those of you who might be wondering what else is coming up, we're going to be having a live stream tomorrow with some networking experts. We actually have someone from LinkedIn coming and talking about networking and how you can actually get better opportunities through networking as well. So please do tune in at 3 p.m. this time, exactly where you are watching, 3 p.m. right now, tomorrow. We will be doing that live stream. And then the other thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be having networking sessions, which we're running off of Twitter Spaces. So it's an opportunity for you as an entrepreneur to come through and just say, hi, my name is this is what my company does, this is my product, this is my service, this is what I'm offering, and this is how I'd like support, or this is what you can purchase from me. So please do feel free to come in and tag along on that. We're also going to be doing a masterclass on creative marketing on Saturday at 10 a.m. right here, wherever you're watching this. And then our last activity for the week, we're going to be doing mental health sessions. We're also using Twitter Spaces where we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. You guys know, as entrepreneurs, this thing is so stressful. We are always stressed as entrepreneurs. We're always facing some sort of challenge, and consistently just having to work through a lot of mental issues. So we'll also be talking about imposter syndrome. So do join us. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you guys here today. I see a comment there by you, Lebo, that all of this was insightful. I'm sure that the speakers see this and they appreciate your comment. And I guess I will see everybody back here tomorrow. So looking forward